It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Okay, my first guest today is Mark Lane, and he's part of this organization called the Minority Humanitarian Foundation. You can find him at humanitarianfoundation.com, and there's also a Facebook page, Minority Humanitarian Foundation. And he's working with these immigrants seeking refugee and asylum status at the border. Mr. Lane, are you there?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Great. I'm doing good, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I just asked you at the last minute, and I thank you for making the time for me today. I really appreciate that.
Not a problem.
No, thank you.
It's an important topic, so.
Tell me about it, man. It's heartbreaking. I can't even watch this stuff anymore. It's amazing that we live in a society right now where we're allowing this to go on. Before we get started, tell us about yourself. Who is Mark Lane?
Mark Lane is a local activist here in San Diego. I've worked with immigrants pretty much for the bulk of my adult life, which is a long life so far. So, but I've been working with them for probably 25 to 30 years. We kind of changed the focus of the work we do over the last several years, obviously because of the new administration and what they're doing. But we do on-the-ground relief efforts in Tijuana, Mexico, which is right across the border from us. We bring supplies to the shelters. We help out at the shelters. We help prepare people to process with CBP, Border Patrol, our Border Protection. We sometimes will walk people up there and turn them in as well. We do medical relief down in Tijuana, things like that. On this side of the border, here in San Diego, once asylum seekers are released from detention, whether it's from CBP detention or ICE detention, we'll grab them, we'll house them, we'll take care of any immediate needs that they have, here in San Diego, and then we also help reconnect them with their families. So we'll get them their airline tickets if someone's going to Chicago where their family is. Yeah, we'll fly them out there.
I've been looking at your Facebook page because we just met last night, and you actually take these people into your own personal home.
That's correct. And we also have about, right now in San Diego, we have about 20 short-term host families. So we've got 3 long-term host families because some of the asylum seekers don't have anywhere to go. So we'll put them into a longer-term host family until we find a permanent solution for them. And then we have outside of San Diego in different cities, we have some host families as well that we're able to fly people to. We also use, luckily for us, Lyft granted us $32,000 in ride credits. So we use Lyft to move migrants around. Because once we fly them to their families or to wherever they're going, we stay with them, throughout their case if they want us to. So we have people in almost every single state now, and sometimes they need to get to court, to meetings at school, to doctors. So we'll move them around in Lyfts until they're situated where they can move around themselves.
Now, that's interesting. You mentioned a few times families, that they have families here in the United States already. So then why are we, okay, let's say, give them a benefit of the doubt, okay, that for some reason they want to separate the children from their immediate family. But why is it that if they have family here in the United States, why couldn't these children at least be temporarily placed in foster care with their immediate family, their relatives in the United States?
Pre-Trump, the thought process of our government was, and this is across the board, Republican or Democrat administrations, but pre-Trump, the thought process was, we don't want these people to be a burden to the taxpayers. So they were released to their families. If they came and they requested political asylum and they were found credible and they had somewhere to go, they were released to their families. Post-Trump, the thought process is, we want to fill beds in for-profit detention facilities. And one of the very first things he did in February of his first, month of the administration is he created a new rule for people that were turning in at the border where it was a 6-month mandatory detention. There was nothing to that rule except for the fact that it filled beds in for-profit prisons. So it's frustrating. It's difficult. The kids have places to go for the most part. It's not like what Obama was facing, where he was facing a lot of unaccompanied minors coming without their families. These are kids that are coming with their families.
Now, when you
so
say...
now the tax...
Yeah.
I was just going to say, so now the taxpayer is funding the detention stays, and the taxpayer is responsible for that money, and our administration doesn't care because the money's going to friendly donors, friends in business, whoever it is that's running these detention facilities. That's where it's going. So that's the thought process has changed. That's why they're not being released. The fact that he's separating kids, and it's still happening. People think it's not happening. It's still happening. He's doing that because he's evil. For lack of a better, anything better to say, it's an evil administration.
Well, and greedy, too, because when you say that the motivation behind this is these for-profit prisons, that these policies are being created to make money in these for-profit prisons, there is an open source chain of custody there with John Kelly, who was the former secretary, the chief of staff in the White House, left and went to work on the board of one of these for-profit detention centers.
One of the biggest ones for kids. And it's painfully obvious to anyone that wants to see it. The only way these detention facilities make money is they have to have inventory, right?
Right.
It's just like any other business. And the difference being that inventory right now is bodies. It's human bodies. And that's how they make money. If the beds are empty, they don't make money. I think what caught your attention last night was, one of the comments I made to a mutual friend, in that what we're seeing every single day is what people are just finally starting to really hear about and really see, with these Congress people going inside with Joaquin Castro taking pictures. We see it every single day. And I'll give you, for instance, when we work with someone on the other side of the border, they're full of hope. They're full of joy. They're excited to turn themselves in. They can't wait to have their opportunity to have their case heard. And then when we pick them up, when they're released, because some of the families are getting released, we'll pick someone up a week later when they're released from the detention facility, and they're like zombies. Mm. And a lot of them want to go back home after the treatment they received in the detention facilities. It's night and day from when they go into when they come out. And that's us. That's in our custody. That's us, the way we're treating them.
I got so many questions for you. I don't even know where to start. We're bouncing all over the place. And I think most of it's because of the trauma that you're going through watching all this stuff every day, and there's stuff that I see on TV.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yes, it is. Why don't we do this? Because the reason I contacted you is you told a story about a 6-year-old that you're working with right now. Can you tell that story?
Last May, I received a phone call from a man, and he was crying. And through his crying and his sobbing, it was on a Sunday evening, he was telling me that his daughter had been separated from his wife when they turned in Texas. His daughter had been separated for 57 days at that point. And he told me that they had called him several weeks ago and told him that she had been molested. He tried to get them to grant custody over to him. They didn't. They said that they changed some protocols and that it wouldn't happen again. About 10 days after the first call, I received another call that she'd been molested again. There was... at that point, I told him, look, I said, give me your address. I'll get our lawyer. We'll fly up there, because he was not here in San Diego. I said, we'll fly up there tomorrow. So we flew up to where he was at the next day. We met with him. We went through all the paperwork that they had sent him from the facility in Arizona, a facility that was owned by Southwest Keys, which is one of the huge players in child detention in the United States. And there was one form of disciplinary form that they had the 6-year-old sign, putting the onus on her to stay away from the other kid that was touching her and doing things to her. She didn't even know how to write her name.
Yeah, right. Why can't a 6-year-old sign her name? Yeah.
Yeah, she just wrote a letter D, And then they wrote in parentheses, they wrote her name. And that was on a Monday. So as we were driving back to the airport to fly back to San Diego, I called one of the senator's offices here and told him what was going on. And we were able to get the girl out the next day on Tuesday, and she was sent to Texas and reunited with her mom. And then on Wednesday, we were able to get both of them out and sent to where the father was and reunited with the father. The girl, when she was reunited with her mom, didn't recognize her mom and asked her mom if she was another social services person who was going to take her home, which was odd because nobody should have taken her home. You know, so that was just a red flag right there. Nobody should have taken her home where she was at. But that's what she said. She wouldn't play with the other kids. Wait.
You're saying that this child told her mother that while she was in this facility, one of the social workers took her to the social worker's home with her?
What she said to her mom was, "Are you another worker who's going to take me home?" So that's a red flag. That's, some of the stuff I can't talk about because it's an active,
Sure.
We're getting ready to file the federal tort claim. We're going to file it this week. But, that's a red flag. That's a giant red flag. She wouldn't hug mom. She wouldn't hug dad. She would sleep on the top bunk because that's where they made her sleep inside the facility. She would wake up at 5 o'clock. She would take like a 3-minute shower. Any of the kids that tried to play with her, she would lash out at them. And that was a year ago. We've worked with the family in regards to therapy. We've worked with the family in regards to getting her into a special program at school. She's now, just a year later, just now starting to really blossom and talk about things. And we've recorded her several times just having conversation where she wasn't, being asked anything. She wasn't being prompted on anything. She's just talking. And she's talking about things that happened in there. And it's, we're debating between the lawyer and the family whether to release some of those audio tapes. But it's a similar thing that you're going to hear from, ones that you're already seeing and hearing as these stories come out. I don't know if you remember that. There was a facility in Arizona where a video came out where they were showing people working at the facility dragging kids, forcing them to eat, forcing them to do things, and dragging them across the floor. I don't know if you remember those.
No, I never saw those
videos.
I never saw those. Yeah.
Those videos came out last year towards the end of summer, and that was the same facility that she was in. She was in that facility. Arizona has since revoked the license for, I believe, 7 of the Southwest Keys facilities in Arizona. But it's just like anything else.
Wait a second. They've revoked the license, but has anybody been arrested?
Nobody. Well, there's been a couple people arrested for other children that were abused. There was another facility not far from hers where one of the workers was molesting a 14-year-old girl. That worker was arrested. It was literally a week to 2 weeks of stories coming out of all those facilities in Arizona. There were similar stories. Our story came out, and then several other ones broke. People have been arrested for different things, physically abusing the kids, sexually abusing the kids. No one's been arrested in her case because it was another kid that did it. But under the care of adults who were supposed to make sure that didn't happen, and under the care and custody of the United States, who subcontracts out to Southwest Keys across the country.
Yeah, it shouldn't be so difficult to keep track of kids. This isn't going on in school classrooms and right in front of the teacher, so it's to this extent, so it shouldn't be that hard to keep an eye on things and prevent these things from happening. But just to make this perfectly clear, this is not a situation where these parents and this 6-year-old got together and said, hey, let's come up with this story. The parents were notified in writing, on record, by the facility that this happened, right?
That's correct.
Right. So there's no way anyone can say, well, that's just a story.
but they're still saying that. They're still saying it's a money grab. They're saying, the same thing they always say. They should have never came. It wouldn't have happened. It's the parents' fault for dragging the kids. If you move, Ed, from one house to another, from one city to another, you don't leave your kids at the old house.
Yeah.
You bring your kids with you. And, that's what we all did. The generations of people that immigrated to the United States before that weren't brown all brought their kids as well. So it's frustrating that the administration has emboldened these people to speak out like they are. It's infuriating that we're looking at kids, human beings in general, but let's just talk about the kids being abused, state-sanctioned abuse, and people are turning their heads to it. It's incredible to me.
Mark, just the fact
I got arrested. I got arrested 5 times last year, protesting and fighting for these people. I'm shocked that more people aren't out in the streets and shutting things down. It's blowing me away that we're not screaming and burning this down. I mean, this is. I look at a list of 10 steps to genocide. If you look at that list, we're like at number 7.
Yeah.
As we build towards it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things on it. One is, if the average person thinks that this can't happen to them, that they can't be put in these cages and treated the same way, that they're out of their mind. But just the fact that we have an expression called kids in cages, and when someone says that, the other person is saying, what are you talking about? What kids in cages? What do you mean? Like, this is a common expression now that we all know that right now as we talk, there are little kids being held in cages in inhumane conditions. And the average person just goes to work like nothing's wrong. They stop at Starbucks, they get their coffee, and making jokes, and all's fine. Everything's fine in the world.
Yeah. Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
It's on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Because I don't hang out with a lot of really, really conservative people. I do hang out with a lot of really what people say they're liberal, right? And they're doing nothing. Nobody's doing anything. I'm Jewish. We know what's going on. Mm-hmm. We know what's going on. My family, we lost a lot of our family during the Holocaust, and we've heard the stories our whole life. Our whole life. We know what's going on. We know what they're doing, and we know why they're doing it.
Mark, what is the reason that the administration or the officials that they give that why they're separating children from the parents that bring them, or the family members that bring them?
Well, there's no real, I guess, friendly policy on it. They just actually came out recently. One of the heads of either ICE or CBP had said that we did it as a deterrent. We wanted to deter people. We deter people. That's why we did it. And they're still coming. They know weapon conditions. They're still coming, and that tells you how it is. The government.
And he's like in Guelph. It's United Company. United Company owns the land, half the property in the whole country. The consulate and the embassy is on United Fruit Boulevard. So we can't wash our hands of what's going on over there either. It's that's us too.
Although we do wash our hands, we create around the world. If you meet a migrant and you ask what country they come from, you can pretty much guarantee the reasons they had to migrate were created by our intervention in their country. It's almost 100%. The reasons people migrate from all these different countries, and we're, in Tijuana on any given day, we can see 10 or 15 different countries, represented in the shelters. It's not just Central America. But to a T, we're there. We're doing something in their country.
Yeah.
We've either replaced their government or we're raping their resources, but we're doing something that's creating, the reasons that these people have to migrate. And we're ignoring climate change. If they think migration is bad now, people are starting to migrate for water and food. People are going to kill each other for water and food. If they think migration is bad now, as we get worse into the situation of climate change, you're going to see hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people moving.
Now, what about these stories you hear that they like to put out that many of these migrants are renting children in order to come over And one person even sent me a message, and he said, and once they have a kid with them, they get instant, approval. They get instant access. I don't know the exact word he says. But what do you know about this renting of children situation?
One of the things that our government in general and our government today is really good at is dehumanizing these people. And, before we go to a war, and you look at any war, before we go to any war, the political cartoons come out, the commentaries come out about these people. We prep our population to be and people in cages. So it's just part of the propaganda. It's part of the story, the narrative that they're trying to create to make people okay with it. And even people that live in line followers. So if they tell them that people are renting babies, then people are renting babies. That's not what's happening. They started that program, the DNA that they're going to check, or they said they were going to start it. Nothing's happened. I see these families. We deal with these families. They're families, and they're scared. The kids are scared. The moms are scared, and when they're separated, it destroys the families. It's just, it's part of the propaganda. It's part of procedure, standing operating procedure of our country to throw out the propaganda and dehumanize people before we do something horrible to them. Yeah. So that we turn a blind eye.
And like we said before, many of these little children, even though they're with their parents in a different facility, they have relatives here that they could be staying with in a home. Or what about the foster care system? There's no other situation where we arrest parents for a crime. And by the way, this is a simple little paperwork crime. It's like driving without a license or driving without insurance. You don't have your paper. You don't have a certain piece of paper with a picture on it, okay? That's the crime we're talking about here, the crime, okay? We don't arrest a parent for driving without insurance or driving without an unregistered vehicle and then take their kids and put their kids in a separate jail. That never happens anywhere. In other countries, it doesn't happen.
And if it did happen and it was happening to American citizens somewhere else, these same people that are okay with it would be going crazy.
That's so
if
true.
American citizens were in detention centers in some other country being treated the way we're treating these people today, these people would be going out of their mind. They'd want invasions. They'd whatever it takes to save our American citizens. But they're okay with us doing it to brown people.
Yeah, and I forgot what I was going to say, but you're so right. Let's take a commercial break, okay? We're with Mark Lane. He's from the Minority Humanitarian Foundation. There's a website, minorityhumanitarianfoundation.com. There's all kinds of ways you can go to this website and volunteer. You can donate money. You can make your home available to people. If you have any kind of resources you can share. And sometimes they just need backpacks and things like that for school. Now, Mark, I wanted to clarify one thing, too, because I was using the analogy about people driving without a license, this paperwork crime. But the majority of these people that are in these detention centers, have they actually committed any crime? Is there any crime in presenting yourself at the border and asking for asylum?
There's no crime in presenting yourself at the border and asking for asylum. It's domestic law. It's international law that we helped write, and they have the absolute right to come to the border and turn themselves in at a port of entry. They can jump the fence and turn themselves in. It doesn't matter. They're allowed to do it. And so they're not. So we're taking kids away from them for not even committing a crime, not breaking a law. We're not following our rules. We're not following international rules. We're making up rules as we go along. It's amazing to me that, again, we talked about earlier, it's amazing to me that people are going to work every day and like this isn't happening.
So when we see these people in these cages and stuff like that, and we say, well, why don't they just come here legally?
Again,
does your head explode?
That's a right-wing talking point. That's one of the things they scream out every time. They are coming legally. You're not going to be able to convince anybody who's screaming that out, why don't they come here legally? You're not going to be able to convince them because they've got so many talking points behind it. Yeah. That their claims are fake. They're not really coming here, for one of the reasons they can for asylum. Well, that's fine. That may be true. That may not be true. The process will work that out. The process actually works. The very first thing they do is they go through a credible fear hearing, and if they're not found credible, they get deported. If they are found credible, they're paroled into the United States, to fight their case. Their cases are taking 2 to 3 years right now.
Well,
at the end of the case, the judge is going to decide yes or no. Grants of cases of green cards are not very high. There's districts around the country where they're as low as 15% where they're granting, which means the process is working. But the same people who scream how much they love America and who scream about the Constitution and rule of law conveniently don't allow these laws to work. They don't want these laws to work.
Well, I guess it helps with the brainwashing, because if you see people held in jails and cages, you just assume, well, they must be breaking a law. Because we don't do this. The land of the free and the home of the brave. We've only got about 25% of our population in prison. It's not like you're unfairly thrown in jail in this country.
And there's nothing brave about caging up children.
Oh my God, it's so sad. You're right, man. You're right. Now, what about people who say, well, Mark, come on. The only reason why these migrants are coming to this country is because they want to come here and they want to get on food stamps and welfare, and they want to sneak in and get on all our services and do all this stuff for free. And they live like kings, and my kids can't even get these things that they have. What do you say to that?
Listen, it's ridiculous. They know it's ridiculous. I don't know why they say it. We know it's ridiculous. They're not eligible for most of the stuff, number one.
Right.
Number two, if they try to and they get caught, their cases are done. Number two. Number three, they work and they pay taxes. They should be eligible for this stuff. Once they get their work permits, because during the process of political asylum, you're able to get a work permit, they're paying taxes, and they're not getting the benefits back. Undocumented people that are already here that aren't even claiming political asylum, they're paying taxes, and they're buying things. They're paying sales taxes. They're paying gas taxes. They're paying income tax. One of the ways, if someone gets detained on this side who's been here undocumented for any amount of time, one of the ways they get out on bail or on bond, they have to prove that they were here. These people are paying their taxes year after year after year after year, and they're creating these trails, and they're not getting the benefits back. So people are screaming, oh, they want to get free medical care, they want to get food stamps, they want to get this. They don't get that. They don't get it.
Right.
And a lot of them are paying taxes.
Well, and not only that, too, but we just saw a big, quote-unquote, roundup of all these people who were working at 7-Eleven. So, so it just depends. Every morning we go into 7-Eleven, we buy our gas and we buy our cup of coffee and our Slurpee and stuff like that. Like, the person behind that counter has ever been any kind of threat to you or gave you the wrong change even, or was rude to you? These are our friends. These are the people we talk to and socialize with every day. Our buddies. Hey, where'd they go? Well, they came, they got rounded up. Our neighbors.
Yeah, and a lot of these people are screaming and yelling, and then going out tonight and eating Mexican food.
Well, yeah,
they hate people, but they love it. They love the culture.
Yeah.
They hate the people. They're some kind of a threat. And here's another thing too. Look, if you're here in the United States and you speak English and you went to school and you went through our education system, and someone who's coming from another country who doesn't speak the language, who doesn't have financial support, who doesn't have anything, is taking your job, then you probably deserve not to have that job if that person is able to take that job from you. I had a conversation with a guy last night, and he was screaming, they're coming, they're taking our jobs, they're making it hard, blah, 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 blah. And I told him, I said, you as a white man have so much privilege. You're a straight white man. You have so much privilege. And someone who's coming from another country with low skill levels, with no language skill, is taking your job. Really?
Well, on the other hand, too,
your job.
They'll say these are all MS-13 gang members coming here. If they're taking our jobs, what kind of job you got right now? You're worried about competition in a gang, man.
They're drug dealers. They're everything they're saying they are. And they're taking your job?
Yeah, rapists.
What are you doing?
What are you doing for a living? You're worried about that job?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's all part of the propaganda that dehumanizes people to make it okay to cage them.
Yeah.
And use them as fodder for income.
But you want to know what? Even this has gone on under both administrations, both Democrats and Republicans, for years and years and years. Obama's responsible for a lot of these things too. And my brothers, who are they're about 15, 20 years older than me, were born in Cuba. Both of them, and they came here early on in 59, and my brother both went to the military, U.S. military. They became Americans. I don't know if the citizenship, what really happened was, but then my brother went to work for Merrill Lynch down in Puerto Rico, and there's something. They didn't have birth certificates; they were born in a bedroom in Cuba, with no paperwork. Man, trust me with that. And they had to go through all these hoops and hire lawyers to prove their citizenship, to prove their status here. So even people that have been here for years and years and years, and served in the military, go through this stuff too. So it's not
we deport people that served in the military.
I know.
Right across the border, we have 2 different deported veterans shelters down in Tijuana, and it's just Tijuana. So, we that's how we support our troops, right?
And one of the
we're a big mess. We're a big mess. Immigration is very arbitrarily applied, and it's different from white immigrants to brown immigrants. It's very different how they're treated and what avenues are there, what avenues are not there.
Yeah, that's so true too. Canadian border is a whole different situation,
we're not building a wall there, and there's a lot of contraband coming through there.
Absolutely.
And any of the terrorists that were not homegrown terrorists, which is the majority of what we have, that came through and have done anything. Actually, most of them have come through the Canadian border.
Or overstay visas.
Or they come on an airplane on a visa.
Yeah, you're flying on a visa from China and you overstay your visa. And that's happening all over the place, too. That's the majority of this. Oh, that reminds me, that's a good question. What do you think about the situation right now? The idea is, okay, fine, we have to put these people in these detention centers because if we put them out on bail, to await their hearing or the hearing process, that they don't return. How many of them don't return back for their hearing?
Very few don't return back. It's in the 90% range, 95%. I've seen different reports over the last few months because this all of a sudden has become a topic again. It's another thing the administration has thrown out there. Mike Pence at an event a few weeks ago threw it out there that 90% of them don't come back, and immediately was rebuked by facts. It's I've seen 96% come back. I've seen 95%. I've seen 95% of immigrants that have attorneys come to the court hearings. Almost all of ours come back. Our clients that we're working with, almost all of them go to their court hearings. We're sending them. We're sending lifts for them to pick them up and take them to their court hearings. This administration throws Molotov cocktails all day long, so that we're going from here and there. We're trying to put out all these fires, and it's just part of what they do. They're throwing stuff out there and trying to justify what they're doing.
Now, the situation...
if they do let them out on bond, and if they do release them to their families, the problem for this administration is they prove the administration wrong. They prove all those talking points wrong. They get work. They do jobs. They don't commit crimes. They commit crimes at a much lower level than homegrown United States citizens.
Right, and that's another story. Yeah, that's another thing too. But even U.S. citizens, if any kind of you have a court date and you don't show back up, or you have parole violation, probation violation, all those people wind up back in jail in a year. They get picked up in a year, man. 2 years tops. The days of living in this country with no paperwork and being able to fly under the radar are way over.
It's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard.
It's been over for a long time. Well, I wouldn't say a long time, but the past 10 years or maybe 20 years ago when I was out there doing stuff, you could get away with it. But now, forget it. Fake IDs is just not like it used to be. Now, what about the situation we have right now of these people being held in these detention centers, these for-profit detention centers? Would the population in those detention centers diminish at all if we had a big, giant wall down at our southern border?
No. Number one, because we can't have a big, giant wall. It's literally impossible.
China did it. China did it. What about China?
Yeah, how long did it take China to do it?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, yeah, I know what you're saying.
And people still came to China, and people still come, and people still leave. So, listen, we live in the borderlands. Our experience and our reality is very different from people that live in the Ozarks. And they're being fed a story And you can't, you really can't fault them. They're not here. They don't know what's really going on. A lot of the people across the country don't really know what's going on. The only crisis we have here in our border is the one that Trump created by creating a choke point here in San Ysidro-Tijuana border, by stopping processing people. I'll give you, for instance, 3 years ago, we had about 10,000 Haitians in Tijuana and a couple thousand Cubans.
Right.
And we were able to process the bulk of them over a 2 to 3 week period. A lot of them chose to stay in Tijuana, and they took Mexican asylum. They got living permits and work permits, and there's a little community down there now. But the bulk of them we were able to process quickly. Now we're only processing 3 people a day, sometimes 5 people, 10 people.
Wow.
Some days, we'll go 3 or 4 or 5 days where they don't process anybody at our border. Then on top of that, now we're making them wait in Mexico instead of allowing them to process the normal way where they come in and they come into the United States, get paroled in. So we're creating this gigantic mess, this humanitarian mess in Mexico, in Tijuana, on top of what we're doing in our detention centers. The crisis we have here is 100% fabricated by the administration. If they let the process work the way it's supposed to work, we'd be processing these people. We have the capacity to process several hundred people a day here in San Diego. They're just not doing it because they want it to be sensational, and they want a crisis that they can scream at and say, "Send me more money." And the problem with this and that behavior is human lives are affected.
Yeah, and the whole Haitian problem, too, it began with the earthquakes down there. And all that money, that aid money was stolen. It was stolen by the Clinton Foundation. Talk to anybody down in Haiti, and they'll tell you. I've done many shows on this. And we say the Clinton Foundation, too, but even Barack Obama was involved in that scam, too, with those small houses, too, even before, when he was a senator, even before he was president. Wesley Clark was involved in it. Jeb Bush was involved in it. They were like on the boards of these companies stealing this money, man. It's not a secret. It's all out there. So people have to leave Haiti. This is 10 years later. You can't drive from the airport into these towns. People are lined up by the sides of the roads, living on the sides of the roads, asking for handouts. That's how bad it is in Haiti today, after all these years.
And Haitians developed communities in Venezuela and Brazil. And now we're starting to see the Haitians coming again because of what's going on in Venezuela and because of the new administration in Brazil. So we're now seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of Haitians coming again that are migrating to our borders, and they're not coming from Haiti now. Now they're coming from the other countries where they've established, communities over 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Mark, you've been doing this a long time. You've been doing this 30 years, right? You look like a young guy to begin with. I don't know.
I'm 54 and I feel like I'm 84.
Really, man? I'm 57. You look like a young guy. You look really good, man. I tell you, I
appreciate it.
I
appreciate it. It's I don't feel really good. We deal with a lot of ugly stories. We deal with a lot of ugly all day, every day, and it's hard to decompress it all.
Now, what about the PTSD? You must have all kinds of PTSD problems, right?
It's funny. People have been telling me to go to a therapist for a long time. Well, it's actually not funny, but. Yeah. And I just, I'm a man, I'm a tough guy. We deal with our own problems. But I started going about 3 months ago finally because it just got to be too much. It's just so much that I can't decompress out. And within 2 sessions, you have PTSD. Is what she told me. And I said, how can I have PTSD? I've never been in combat. I've never had a traumatizing experience. She said, you have trauma every single day. And, you're going 100 miles an hour and you're trying to work and help these people because every phone call we get is a crisis. We don't get a phone call that says, hey, in a month, we're going to be there. Can you prepare for us? We get a phone call at 3 a.m. from a security guard at the border for the trolley who says there's a family of 5 that's been out here all night long. Can you come get them? And we're immediately in crisis mode. So it's always crisis mode. It's always 100 miles an hour. It's hard. I don't sleep good. It's never been as bad as it is now. And you just go 100 miles an hour and you don't realize what's going on in your own body and in your own head. And it's tough. It's hard. Some days are tougher than others.
Yeah, because your baseline of trauma is at a high level. You've just been doing it so long. I know exactly what you're talking about, man.
Yeah, it's. I can give you examples of stuff that people just have no idea. We just dealt with a woman from Guatemala. She's 23 years old. She's never had consensual sex in her life.
Oh my God.
She's only been raped since she was a child. And so she has to sit down in a little room with me, a big ugly dude, and tell me the details of her torture and her rapes and her assaults so we can put it together in a story for her to be ready to turn herself in and go through the process. And we do this all day, every day. You know, we have a little kid in one of the shelters right now that we met about 2 weeks ago, and this should infuriate everybody. He's 1.5 years old. He has cancer. The situation where they came from was life or death. They didn't have a choice. So he hasn't had treatment for his cancer now in about 4 months. He has lost one of his eyes, so he has a prosthetic eye, but it's too small for him. So when we're down there working with him, he's running around playing, his eye falls out. And he picks it up, a 1.5-year-old. He picks it up,
God.
And he brushes it off on his clothes and puts it back in. They've already turned themselves in, and they were rejected because of the MPP, the Migrant Protocol, Protection Protocol, where they're making them stay in Mexico. This kid needs to be here in the United States. His family needs to be here. It's not safe for him because of his illness. It's also not safe for him because of the people they're fleeing. The people they're fleeing have people in Mexico. And we made this family go back to a shelter. He's living in a tent on concrete. And all day long, every day, his eye is falling out and he's putting it back in himself. That's what our government's doing. You know, and I can tell you stories over and over of all these different people we're dealing with that are dealing with similar situations. It's horrible. And we're doing it, and it's state sanctioned.
If you say that only 10% are passing through this process of being deemed worthy of asylum, if you were making that decision, the other people you meet, what percentage would you be sending back?
Well, I'm not saying it's 10%. I'm saying in some districts it is. There's other districts where it's high as 85%.
Okay.
So it's different depending on the district you end up finally landing in, depending on where your family is. You know, for me, look, I see these guys, we deal with them, they live with us, they live with our friends. We know what they're going through. We see the trauma in them. We feel the trauma in them. We experience their trauma. It would be hard for me to say no to a lot of these people. It really would. I always tell people the way we help them the best so they don't have to come is instead of destroying their countries, we prop up their economies, we prop up their countries. We spend those millions of dollars instead of raping them. We spend it to build them up so they stay. The majority of them don't want to be here. Over and over, the common thing we hear is, I don't want to be here. I wanted to die in my village. That's where my family's died for generations. I don't want to be here. I don't understand this country.
You know, but
they don't have a choice.
The thing with that is, though, is people don't realize, too, that any humanitarian, quote-unquote, humanitarian aid that we send to other countries, we also send over the Secretary of Commerce over there, too, and he has a list. It says, okay, here's your check of aid, and here's where you're going to spend it, you know, with our donors and our lobbyists and our cronies. So, you know, even aid is hopeless, man. Propping up these countries in aid is hopeless. It all goes back to the same guys that dreamed up this thing to begin with.
Yeah. And that's not only there, that's here too.
Yeah.
So when you see these big organizations getting these big, huge checks and grants, it's not all going trickling down. Yeah. The trickle down thing never has worked.
Yeah.
You know, so always, you know, pay attention to that. Pay attention to where you're giving your aid. Pay attention to where you're giving your effort, because and the aid always comes with stipulations.
Yeah, that's so true, man. You see the board of directors of these places, the employees they hire, they're making really good salaries in a lot of these places, man. And anyway, we can be
the guy who owns Southwest Keys makes $1.5 billion a year, and it's a nonprofit.
What is it called? Southwest Keys? What is that?
Southwest Keys is a nonprofit that contracts with the government to detain children all across the country.
Okay.
They have little detention facilities. They have a little bit bigger detention facilities. You know, there's a couple here in San Diego. One of them holds, and I think they're probably holding about 100 kids right now, maybe somewhere around there.
Okay, so something like that. If they're established as a nonprofit and what they're doing is obviously criminal, a congressional investigation, that's a weekend deal to see this and pass some legislation to prevent this. You know, like you know what I mean?
Listen,
oversight.
You know, the Republicans don't care, and the Democrats are feckless.
Yeah.
So I don't, unless we have some kind of dramatic change of something, I don't see anything getting better, and I don't see any investigations that are going to have any kind of teeth to them, because the donations that go to the Republican Party from the for-profit prisons also go to the Democratic Party.
Absolutely. And like we said, when we said, look at Haiti, Obama was in Clinton, they were all in cahoots all together, Jeb Bush, all buddies together and this kind of stuff.
I don't. It's business as usual. I don't see anything changing. I don't see. I'm glad that congressmen and I've taken congressmen to shelters, and I've taken state assembly members to shelters, but nothing really comes of it afterwards. Just a lot of words and a lot of indignation, and then back to normal.
We got about 3 minutes. What do you want to leave us with?
One of the things we didn't talk about that's also happening, and I think it's very important that people understand, and this is what we do the most of our work in. Last October, our government stopped safely releasing people, meaning calling their families and saying your family member is going to get released at 3 p.m. today at San Isidro, so please make sure someone's there to get them. Now they just throw them out, and they don't let them make phone calls. They drop them off in the middle of the night. They drive away. These are people that have no idea where they're at, don't speak the language, for the most part don't have telephones, and we're throwing them right into the teeth of into the mouths of traffickers and other bad people that are at the border. That's something else that's not really out there that people don't know, and that's where we do the bulk of our work. Waiting for people to get released and grabbing them, or getting phone calls and grabbing them, and we have to put pressure on our government. We have to put real pressure, not a march. We go out in March and then we all go home and we're happy. We have our latte and we watch TV and we play with our kids. We have to shut things down. The only way we're going to switch this and change this and fix this is we have to shut things down. It's horrible what we're doing to other human beings right now as a government and as a country.
Yeah, that process, that's no accident of dropping people off like that without any warning, because that's the same thing that our jail system does. And I have clients that are in the jail system with mental illness, and then they just, and you could bail them out, and you're waiting 6-8 hours, man, for them to come out. You're just waiting there. Downtown Las Vegas, where they dump them out there, no medication, right there in the heart of the Fremont Street experience. It's just, you're going to wander right over there, man, and wind up right in the hands of sex traffickers and all that kind of stuff. Just like you said, that's not by accident.
No, it's to create crisis. It's to create reasons to request money.
Yeah. Mark Lane, Minority Humanitarian Foundation.com. Mark Lane, anytime you want to come back and you have something you want to talk about, you want to promote, or you want to get some help with, give us a call. We're going to put you right on the air. Okay, man? I can't thank you enough. You've taught me a lot today, and I'm sure you taught the listeners a lot too as well, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having us on and hearing our story.
Thank you so much, my friend. Good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, they have the Minority Humanitarian Foundation.com, Mark Lane, who, by the way, is a friend of Karina Paez, who's been on the show several times, too. Hey, okay. All right. If you like today's show, and you want to keep this kind of work on the air so that people can hear some facts. No, you heard a lot of stuff here you haven't heard before. All right? Stuff about a little 6-year-old being molested. Another woman, the whole adult life, only raped her whole life. A lot of stuff you haven't heard anywhere else before. Names, dates, places you've heard. People working on lawsuits to help other human beings. You want to keep this kind of stuff on the air, we need your support too. Okay, the Minority Humanitarian Foundation, marklane.com. He needs help. Okay, these fellow human beings, these fellow human lives that are out there being held in cages and abused and mistreated, they need your help too. But in order for them to get help, we need your help to stay on the air. If you want to be a good Samaritan, we got to do something. We got to stand up and get some bolt cutters and go down and start freeing people. If we expect to one day stand before God in judgment, okay, and not be turned away, the way we turn away our fellow citizens, fellow human beings. Good night.